Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to Momenta on the main line. We're your hosts. I'm Dr. Joanna Holleran.
And I'm Dr. Ilan Green. We're here to talk about all things health, wellness, fitness, performance, and overall well-being. Hope you enjoy the show. Our guest today is a third generation in the dental field practicing in Rosemont, Pennsylvania. A graduate of Temple University Dental School, he joined his father at Dillon Family Dentistry in 1989 and has been practicing general dentistry there ever since. Dillon Family Dentistry is a low-volume, high personal touch general dentist office. Dr. Dillon centers his practice around educating his patients, listening and answering their questions, and practicing the least invasive dentistry as possible to meet all of his patients' needs. Their motto is modern dentistry, old-fashioned care. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. David Dillon.
Hey, Lon.
What's up? Thanks for joining. When we, I got to be honest, when we had the idea of starting the podcast, especially with like local, people in mind, we made a list, and you were at like the top of that list because I, when we first got to know each other, I was talking to you about it and talking about like your style of practice and your general outlook on life, and just thought it'd be really fun to hang out for 30 to 60 minutes and just kind of pick your brain on this stuff. So I appreciate you taking the time.
Right on. I'm honored.
Cool. So I know we talked a little bit about your background, being a third generation dentist, and I'm just kind of curious. I know we've talked a little bit about it in the past, but third generation in the same practice. I mean, it's a pretty cool honor to be able to kind of carry on that tradition. And over that time,
it really is. It was so my father was a really good dentist. I went into practice with him, and then his father worked for a dental supply company, and he was one of the first people to teach dentists practice management. And it went from like Marcus Welby, the white coat syndrome, doctors knows best, everyone just did what the doctor said, to kind of more collaborative co-diagnosis, what feels right to you. And, also like in dentistry, like treating the patients nicely. It wasn't just like you hung your shingle and everyone who was in the closest radius came to you, like it or not. But, it was just like, okay, there's another way of doing this, a better way of doing it. So, it's kind of funny, like those are the more important things. I was just telling a patient today, like my dad didn't tell me how to drill a tooth better or how to do this and that too much at all. Those aren't the things that I really learned from him. It was all the patient interaction, how to treat to treat another human being in the dental operatory, there's not a disconnect between that in the office and maybe how he treated everybody else in life, So the lessons were constant either at home or in the office.
Yeah. And I know, like, especially, I guess, interpersonal skills in the, I guess, realm of healthcare have like bedside manner is the term for it. Right. But that typically carries over. It's typically a reflection of somebody's personality and the way that they approach people outside of it too. And yeah, I do think that, and kind of leading into the next question too, is, a lot of our approach and outlook on people and the people that we deal with and care for plays a big role in their, I guess, like, I don't want to say like prognosis, but how they do with the care that we actually provide. And so having that in mind and really kind of focusing not only on the skills of dentistry or whatever your craft is, but also focusing on just being able to kind of communicate and connect with people is extremely important in the line of work that we both do. So
sure. I mean, they're going to buy into it more, right?
Yeah, for sure.
If they feel like you're there with them, they're going to buy into it more.
Yeah. And so I think I would describe you as the most personable dentist that I've ever met. And it's not anything necessarily.
So that's like the big fish in a little pond.
Well, it's not anything necessarily about like the lack of personality of the other dentists that I know, as much as the uniqueness that you bring to it in that sense. And so I know we talked about it previously, and one thing that I know you wanted to talk about, something that you're passionate about, is kind of how transformative dentistry can be for, a lot of people. And so I know you came up with a couple examples that we talked about before. I don't want to spoil it, so I'll let you kind of take it. But I know that like being able to provide some transformation for people is really important. So I'll let you kind of dive into what that means and a couple examples of some of the cases that you've seen, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. So like on like a more basic level, absolutely positively what you guys do is absolutely transformative. You take people who can't walk, can't run, can't go upstairs and everything, and you help them through. So that would be transformative of,
in like a physical kind of, yeah.
Take care of fillings and stuff like that. Or, someone who wants a pretty smile, like, sure, that's transformative and everything. And that's kind of on a cool practicing level for us.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But then the things that resonate with me a lot more and are like the bigger victories for me, the transformative victories for me are, the more, like you were alluding to, like the more personal aspects of it. So sometimes, probably the one demographic of patients that my office is the best suited to, that I have oriented my office the best towards, is all the people that are dental-phobic patients.
Right.
And everything of how we deal with them and everything with the vibe in the office and everything else is all set up to be that transformative experience for them. And we almost routinely do this in 1 or 2 visits. We have people that pace the hallway, can't sit down in the chair when they finally come into the operatory. They won't swing their legs around. They like shudder with the idea of opening their mouth. And with like a visit or two, and like you and I had talked about before, it's the trust, it's the communication. They know that they were heard. They know what's important. They know that I know what's important to them and that matters to me.
Right.
Like, and it comes down really to, if there was one word, it's control.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's they're opening like a very vulnerable part of their mouth. They can't see what's going on. And they know I'm bringing in all sorts of terrible things, pokey, drilly, pointy, terrible things, and it's really difficult. So that's, if there is a demographic that I take the most pride in, that's the most heartwarming, transformative experiences that I get the privilege of being part of, it's transforming the dental phobic patient into someone who just comes in and we just start talking about, hey man, did you see this on TV, or did you listen to this music or whatever? What music are we going to listen to today? And then we get into this whole conversation of like what music it is, and like the dentistry is just being done, and they're just engaged in the whole great conversation, sincere conversation that we're having about music.
Right. So I was going to ask you too, because I think half of it is obviously the ability to kind of meet somebody where they're at and communicate properly. But then the other half is also the environment that you create. And so I'm wondering if you can kind of talk a little bit about that. Obviously, like you want to provide, music can be really calming for people, something that's like familiar, that they can just kind of relax and don't have to it doesn't have to be an extra thing. It can just be something that they're familiar with and allows them to relax. Are there any other things that you do or kind of make an effort to do that you feel are unique that help in that other half, almost the intangibles?
Yeah, everything.
Yeah. Easy.
Like it's all part, right? It's all part of it. Right. So it would be, your Briggs-Myers thing where you meet people where they are and everything. If there's the serious person who just wants to get in, get out and everything else, they don't want to be bothered by it. It's them. It's the person who wants to show you the picture of all their kids and everything else. Or a person who wants to know how you're feeling about stuff and everything, that's all fine. And there's all ways of dealing with them and everything else. And then the grinding halt is the engineer.
Yeah.
Who wants to know every detail in minutia. Throw out all the other things that you learned. You're just going to have to sit down and you're going to have to go through, because it's what you need to do, though. It's what you need to do for that guy.
Yeah.
So it's basically caring about understanding who the patient is.
Right.
And then the whole vibe in the office is construed around there. So we normally just have one patient in the office at a time. We have a really cool Sonos sound system in the office, and we're bumping music all the time. The cool thing about the Sonos is we can play different music in different rooms. It used to be that, we everybody listened to the same music in the office at the same time. And everybody in the office just kowtowed to whatever the patient wanted to listen to. So nothing against people who enjoy country and hip hop stuff and everything else. Fortunately, it's not a huge demographic in my office, and we find other ways to get around that.
Yeah.
But we all listen to what it is. But it's not just that, but it's how I'll speak to my office manager, how I'll speak to my dental assistant. Like the whole vibe in the office is, and it's not the lowest common denominator, but it's wherever that person is on the spectrum. That's how everything is consistently around the office.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's everything.
Yeah. And I think it's also kind of speaking of even like the way that you would kind of describe your practice style as like a low volume, high personal touch. I mean, everything is kind of focused on the emphasis of having enough time to be able to provide that sort of experience for somebody, because it can make all the difference in their overall experience and how well they do with it and how open they are to actually receiving care, which is great. I know in terms of transformative, there's another form that I know you're also pretty passionate about. And I know it kind of has to do with a certain patient population where, I mean, let's be honest, like the way that your teeth look and the way that you feel about your visual like presentation of yourself is extremely important. And a lot of times there are people who can't quite afford to be able to do that for a long time and finally get around to it. We've just had some cool conversations in the past about that type of patient.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you might be able to talk a little bit about that.
So I probably for a bunch of different reasons, the demographic that has very much endeared themselves to me it's more back to that I'm just proud and privileged to be able to be part of it, is people who have lived non-linear lives. People whose lives have dipped, and they could have dipped for whatever reason, self-esteem, mental health issues, and a lot of times a very big one and real one, especially these days, is drug addiction, substance abuse stuff. And these people, their lives have dipped and they're on the uptick and they're clean. They get a job, they get a place to live. They start repairing the relationships in their lives. And very frequently I get to be the person who's putting the last piece of the puzzle, in there. And it's a real privilege. And once again, a lot of these people, they come in not loving the idea of getting it. It's something they've been putting off. And what happens is when they start putting it off, the enormity of what they have to get done is overwhelming, and if they start thinking of, oh my God, this is bad, that's bad, I'm gonna have to have this taken out, and da-da-da-da-da-da. When they start thinking of everything in totality, it's like, how can you, I can't afford to do that now and everything else. And it's just a matter of saying, dude, you already did the hardest thing.
Yeah.
You're here. Like, you did all the work to get here and you're here. Like, I just need you to really believe, and this is me being completely honest and sincere, like, you've done all the hardest things. I promise you, I'm going to make this not quite a victory lap, but pretty damn close to a victory lap. The hard work is all done before me. Like, wow. Them and everybody else, who's part of their team. Yeah. Their tribe. I mean, so that's a really cool experience.
Yeah. I think that's a really good way to put it, and I think also just kind of like making the decision to pursue it at the end and show up. I mean, most of it's being able to just kind of like show up and being willing to allow that transformation to happen too.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. I guess when it comes to, I think being able to kind of like follow some of the things that you're most passionate about, I think it's, I mean, honestly, like in what we do, like there are definitely like the bread and butter things that come in. There's a lot of things within like that I see, like general back and neck pain, things like that. But then there are also those cases like you're describing that really kind of get you going and then kind of like keep you, like make you feel like a lot more fulfilled in everything that you're doing.
Sure.
How, I'm curious, just based on career wise, like at what point did you find that within yourself, like as a provider? And at what point did you kind of like actively begin pursuing it?
Before I went into it. So I think
Cool.
if I had to, it's a great question. And I think I have a solid answer. I think I know where you're going. And I think I really have a really solid answer for you for that.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably the reason that I decided to go into dentistry is when we would go out and like my dad's patients would see him and I'd look at the way that they would look at him and be like, yum, yum, give me some. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Like I want my life to be that kind of purposeful.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want my life. The more I've gotten to know myself, and this is especially a lot of it is since the pandemic, but starting in the pandemic and going through the pandemic is a yearning for purposefulness in my life, and maybe
Yeah.
the most supreme purposefulness. But sometimes it's even just basic. I was over visiting my wife's family over in Latvia,
Mm-hmm.
and my some of my meditative time, decompressing time, most precious time, was spent just out foraging for mushrooms in the woods.
That's awesome.
And like the idea that I'm bringing this home and we will eat this.
Yeah.
Like there was a sense of purposefulness in there. I wasn't just throwing rocks in a creek or something like that or whatever. So I think it was the purposefulness, and that people would really it would be a career that would allow me to maybe do things for people that they would really, really appreciate.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I went into it. So I think I had it before I went into it.
For sure.
I think that's why I went into it.
Yeah. The service to people is the purpose, and the appreciation that you receive is kind of the reward, right?
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah. Fair.
So you and your partner, right? Like
Mhm.
you go to a party, either one of you, it's probably the same thing as me. You go to a party, you meet someone, you just start talking with them, and you're vibing with them really well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, like how disproportionately are those people in healthcare?
Yeah.
You later find out that they're in healthcare, right?
No, it's true. It's true. I think it draws a lot of people who got into it for the sake of, just wanting to help people. And then of course there's
more empathetic.
I think, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. And that's the crux of it all right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so kind of on that note, because I think like as a younger professional, I think too, I mean, Joanna and I kind of go back and forth. Like we're very drawn to this idea. And I know it's like a term where it's like an evidence-based practice or patient-centered practice. And, you still have to kind of like do the things to make sure that you're like viable as a business and you can keep the doors open to keep, continuing to see people. But I think like you've done a very, very good job of being able to have like a good balance in life, but also being able to keep the focus on patient-centered care. And so I'm curious, as like a younger provider, is there any, and I know actually there are a bunch of younger providers that are probably going to listen to this too. I know their dentistry and chiropractic are different fields, but they're very similar in a lot of ways in terms of working with people.
Sure.
Do you have any recommendations or things like pieces of advice or even just like things that you've kind of pondered over the years that have helped to provide that sort of focus throughout your career?
Sure. It's an utterly personal decision, right?
Yeah.
We're a fee for service office.
Mm-hmm.
The way that I run my office is far from the most profitable way to run a practice.
Yeah.
Right. So if we looked at how many hours I spent in my office over 32 years now, right, and did what the average dentist on the main line makes compared to how much I made, like I would have a huge chunk of change, an extra huge chunk of change. And man, I like toys, I like cars, I like this, I like traveling and everything else. I love my wife and I love my kids. And it's like, I just want to spend time with them. And then if I can do it at work where I can do that, like I absolutely positively treat every one of my patients the way that I would want to be treated. I'm having a problem. Chances are if somebody calls on the phone and they're having a problem, Joanne very likely is going to say, how soon can you be here?
Right. Yeah.
Right. Someone calls in an evening or on a weekend, I'm the kind of person that picks the thing up,
Right.
you know, and I tell my celly is on my business cards. I tell them like, look, you know, when in doubt, just call me and we'll talk about stuff and everything else. So, I mean, you know, when I was a kid, I think back, like, I don't know about you, but like, I know people like, hey, you know, I have this goal. My goal is, you know, I want to have a house in Aspen by the time I'm 50, or I want to do the 7 summits.
Right.
You know, I want to retire by this age, or I want to make my first million by this age and everything else. Or it could be, you know, I want to do 7 marathons or whatever, you know, whatever your goals are. And the only goal that I ever really had, the only vision that I had as a kid, I'm the youngest of 5. It was sitting at the head of a table and there should be a little bit of a cacophony, you know, and a juggling act.
Yeah.
And we all problem solve it together.
Yeah.
That's the only vision that I had in my life of what success would look like.
Right. Yeah.
So it's not, so other people, and it's not, life is a huge exercise for me to constantly not project my values on other people. Right. And, so I know, like, you know, when someone says, oh, they're really successful and everything else, like for a lot of people, that means something completely different from me. And that's great. Right. You know, if that's great for them and healthy for them and healthy for their family and everything else. And even if it's not, if it's what they need to feed the beast for themselves, then I guess that's what they should be doing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's the work giggles balance, you know?
For sure. Yeah.
And I like said, screw it. I'm gonna have giggles at work too.
Yeah.
You know, we laugh and joke and play around. We play games all the time in the office. So I mean, it's, you know, it's a realistic, honest look of what's important to you.
Yeah, for sure.
And for a lot of people, for a majority of the people, you know, a more significant financial thing, whether they have to take care of their family members or they just want to stop working by a certain time or whatever, like the financial aspect of it for a majority of people, you know, their values are different than mine, I think.
Yeah.
You know, like they want to make more money. They have more goals that maybe require money. You know, once again, I'm very fortunate. My wife grew up in the Soviet Union, you know, hey, we got potato, you know, we're good. Right. So she's like the least materialistic person I've ever met in my life.
Right.
She's not cheap. She's, I don't know, she's frugal. I guess she's frugal, but she's like, you know, she just needs that mushrooming and the same thing. Right. That's like the most sacred time in her life.
Yeah. But to go back, I think it's like just focusing on fulfillment and building life, career in like the same, I guess, viewpoint of finding that balance to be able to provide for the people that you care about and the patients that you serve in the same manner, right? Of always kind of doing what you feel like is best for those individuals. And I just really admire that. And so I appreciate you, you know, being willing to talk about it. And you're also just like a very open person. And so I think it's always just interesting. And I resonate with a lot of the viewpoints that you have in general.
There's like a few things that I kind of deliberately I stop and do for myself.
Yeah.
And one of them is someone's like, hey, how you doing? How's your day going? You know, it's been pretty good. I did this. I saw an old friend. I was able to take, you know, I spent time with an old friend. Like I try to give thoughtful answers to that and everything. And just kind of in the moment, my own little mindfulness tricks and whatever I do. But I think it's, you know, important to just be present, to be mindful.
Yeah.
And I think there's lots of little exercises that I've just on my own just thought like, I'm just going to do this.
For sure. Yeah. Recognizing the things that you appreciate throughout the day. And it does make the day that much better too. It's kind of what we choose to focus on. Yeah. I know we only have a little bit of time left. I know it's a shorter episode, and I know on a future one, I definitely want to have you back on to talk a little bit more clinical stuff too, because I know we've talked about it and I want to dive into it. So if you're game for a second episode later on.
Oh, totally. Because I love that conversation, and I love the confluence of our practices
For
our
sure.
disciplines of what we can do, what we can offer for people. And
Yeah.
it's cool, we can talk to each other and we know exactly the experiences that our patients are having and the reactions we're going to get and everything
Yeah.
else.
And I think at the end of the day, it's like, I think being able to kind of, pick up on what it is that you can provide for people, and then really focusing on doing a good job of actually providing that for people. It does just, I mean, it's so much more fulfilling for like us as providers, and so much more fulfilling for the patients who actually come in and experience the care that we provide. And so I think the more people who hear that message, it goes far for both patients seeking providers and for providers being able to provide that for the patients who seek them. It just, I think it's a really, really important approach to care, regardless of what you're doing. So I genuinely appreciate it. I have a couple fun questions. I'm actually going to switch them up for you, because I think they're fun questions.
I push your comfort zone.
All right. So, okay. If you could pick one message, and this isn't like a full paragraph, just like one or two sentences to throw up on a billboard for millions of people to see every day, what would that message be?
Just a message for how to live life and everything.
It can be whatever you want. It can be like all gas, no brakes. I don't know. Or chill out.
All gas, no brakes.
I'm just kidding. I guess I was picturing people driving by it, so that's why I said that one. Or it can be, don't forget to drink water. I don't know.
Yeah, sunscreen. Be nice, be thankful, be appreciative. Just that.
That's a good one. Cool.
Um,
Yeah, no, simple, clear, easy, fantastic reminder. Okay, next question. This one we've asked people before, but what's the most influential book you've ever read?
Most influential book I've ever read.
Could be a movie, could be a story. Doesn't have to be a book.
So there are a bunch of different ones that just paralleled stuff with my practice philosophy. Mm-hmm. Seven habits of highly effective people and all. We've been talking about that a lot with my daughter and everything, with Sophia, trying to get her to right, trying to get her to be effective in what she's doing. Thank you very much for helping put that Death Star of a body of hers back together.
Of course,
trying to get the Death Star fully operational again. But one of the books I read during all that was The Customer Comes Second. There used to be a big travel agency mm-hmm. in Philadelphia called Rosemont. And I read the book and it was really good. It's like the customer comes second, the staff comes first. Mm-hmm. And that's what I've done with my office. Like, I had a larger staff. I just whittled down to a smaller staff. We had office policy manuals. Mm-hmm. I hired people who really care and think about, what they're doing and everything. And you don't need like, okay, in this situation, you do this and you do that. Hey, do you need any help? What can I do here? Or, their heads are in the game and they care. And I've had for 10 years, last 10 years, I've had just an incredible staff. I'm fortunate. There's been a couple different players that have changed and all, but the book was something that, a lot of the principles in the book resonated with me really well.
Yeah.
And so it turns out the guy who read the book came over to my house, wrote the book, came over to my house one day. He says, "Hey, I'm Hal. Is Kyle here?" I'm like, "Yeah." I used to have, when I was single parent with my son, mm-hmm. I'd have 7-8 kids sleep over all the time and everything else. Yeah. Kyle was sleeping over. "Hey, I'm Hal. Is Kyle here?" "Yeah." Bring Kyle down. He's leaving, and I was like, it's maybe the first author of a book I've ever that I read that I ever met. So it was pretty funny.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. And did you ever ask him any questions or no?
No, I only saw him a couple of times after that. Oh, that's okay. And I just, I think I just told him, "Hey, thanks a lot. That was real helpful." And it's, it's a mind sync.
Yeah, for sure.
A mind sync thing of like everything I know taught from my father. Yeah, my mom growing up.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I got another fun question, and then we'll wrap up. I think we got about 2 minutes left. So, if you could have any meal delivered to your door tonight from anywhere in the world, what would it be?
See, I'm just coming back from Europe, man. I'm just like,
I know.
we play a game. So on Mondays, we play a game, the Monday game. It was the best thing you had to eat all weekend long.
Yeah.
Right. And it was sushi, it was this, it was that. For me, it was like, man, I was away, couldn't have a decent sandwich. I got a hoagie, right? So I mean, I'm still wrapped in that.
That's fair.
I don't know. It's too many, nothing against everybody else for the food straight up. It would have to be like octopus or something from Italy, like a couple meals that I've had in an Italian restaurant. I spent a little bit of time in Italy lately. Too many greats, for the experience. I love Portugal, just go to restaurants and just, show me whatever. The experiential aspect of it all. I went to, my wife and I went to Istanbul a few years ago, and I wasn't sure where to go. So I wrote on Facebook, hey, in Istanbul, where's a good place to go? My one friend, Terry, said, well, that's a shame. I used to know a nice Italian place in Constantinople. And this guy who was his separated at birth twin, that the two of them, both friends of mine, had met once. And like the two of them were just like, oh my God. And you're like, yeah, the two of you are together. My buddy, Todd Comiskey, writes back. He goes, go to Dai Pera. Tell Rona that, you're friends of Todd and Sharon's. You'll be well taken care of. We're like, we go there. The owner of the restaurant comes out. We talk about food and everything else. She goes, she makes one dish, comes out. We all eat the dish together. She goes back in. So it's the experiential aspect of the whole thing. I mean, I love food. I don't know. It's too commonplace to say that I'm a foodie.
Yeah.
I love food. The only thing better than really nice food, like my mom used to make, is really bad food.
Yeah.
Cheesesteaks, buffalo chicken cheesesteaks, wings,
Oh, but it's so good. All right. So we unfortunately got a little interrupted towards the end, which is why it's a little bit more of an abrupt ending. So recording this now after we've wrapped up, just want to say a quick thanks to Dr. Dillon for being on the podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation as much as we did, and I hope you took something away from it. It's always fun being able to chat with him, and the conversation's always just enjoyable. So that said, I wanted to be able to kind of take a note. We are going to do a part 2 coming up soon, so keep an eye out for it, where Dr. Dillon and myself and Dr. Holleran are going to talk a little bit more about some of the common musculoskeletal conditions that we've helped to co-manage, including like TMJ disorders. That's that joint in the jaw where people often kind of get pain. So we'll dive into that, and he's a great resource for it in general. So I'm looking forward to that conversation. If you want to find Dr. Dillon, you can find him online at his website. I'll also link it in the show notes, but that's www.brynmardentalcare.com. Or if you just search on Google for Dillon, that's Dillon Family Dentistry, you should be able to find it, no problem. The other thing I wanted to mention before we wrap up is another passion of Dr. Dillon's is working with the Ardmore Rotary Club. It's a fantastic organization that helps to benefit charities all throughout the main line in the Philadelphia area. So I would highly recommend checking them out. If you're interested in getting involved in something like that, the website is ardmorerotary.org. So definitely go check that out. Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoy the episode. If you do and you find it helpful, feel free to share it. Also, we always appreciate any sort of positive reviews, feedback that you may have. And if you like it, feel free to subscribe. So thanks so much. Take care.